The single most dangerous place on Earth for a young, vulnerable girl was not a dark alley or a war-torn country, but the gilded cage of a predator's private jet, soaring high above the law. This is not a story of a single monster, but of a network, a syndicate of silence built on money power and the systematic exploitation of the innocent, all orchestrated by a man who presented himself as a financier to the elite. His name was Jeffrey Epstein, and his world was a mirage of respectability constructed over a bottomless pit of depravity. To understand the horror, you must first understand the architect, a man whose origins are as murky as his crimes. Emerging from the halls of the prestigious Dalton School and later, briefly, the corridors of Bear Stearns, Epstein cultivated an aura of immense, almost mystical wealth. He was a ghost in the financial machine, a man with no visible clients, yet he maintained multiple palatial homes, a private island in the Caribbean he dubbed Little St. James, and that most potent symbol of ultimate privilege, a fleet of private aircraft, most notably a Boeing 727 that would become infamously known as the Lolita Express. The victims, often just girls of 14, 15, or 16, were the lifeblood of this horror. They were not plucked from the ether. They were targeted with chilling precision. Imagine a young girl, let's call her Jane, growing up in a broken home in West Palm Beach, yearning for direction and a way to help her struggling single mother. A friendly, seemingly well-intentioned older girl approaches her at a mall. "You're so pretty," she'd say. "I know a man, a super-rich financier, who pays good money just for massages. It's easy work. It'll help your family." It was a siren song of easy money, a trap baited with empathy and the promise of financial salvation. These recruiters, often previous victims themselves, were the first thread in Epstein's web, luring fresh prey into his orbit. The initial massage at his sprawling Palm Beach mansion was the test, the gateway. The requests would escalate, becoming increasingly intimate and invasive, all under the guise of a professional transaction. The money, always cash, was a tool of complicity and control. And for the chosen few, the ones who didn't fight back, who seemed the most pliable, the most isolated, there was a final, terrifying initiation, an invitation to join Epstein on a trip. This is where the flight logs cease to be mere administrative records and transform into a ledger of predation. The Lolita Express was not just a plane. It was a flying fortress of impunity, a venue where the normal rules of society were suspended at 45,000 feet. The interior was outfitted with a plush, queen-sized bed, a luxury unheard of on standard private jets. The logs, meticulously kept by pilots and crew, read like a who's who of the powerful and the complicit: politicians, royalty, renowned academics, and wealthy businessmen. While many passengers claim they were merely hitchhiking on a convenient flight, unaware of the darkness swirling around their host. The pattern is damning. The names appear again and again, often coinciding with the presence of young, unidentified female guests, their names simply listed as Geist or a single, generic first name. One flight would carry a prince, the next a prominent scientist, and on both, a girl from a troubled background, her presence as incongruous as it was sinister. The island itself, Little St. James, was the final destination, a tropical nightmare disguised as a paradise. Locals nicknamed it Pedophile Island for a reason. The compound was ringed with security cameras and rumors swirled of a mysterious temple-like structure, its purpose never fully explained, adding a layer of occult-like mystery to the base criminality. For years, the system worked. The victims, traumatized and ashamed, were paid off or intimidated into silence. The powerful guests turned a blind eye, accepting the bizarre presence of underage girls as just another eccentricity of a wealthy man. But every empire of lies has its weak point, and for Epstein, it was the unwavering courage of one Palm Beach police detective named Joe Riccari. In 2005, the parents of one of the girls filed a suspicious complaint. It was not a loud, dramatic event, but a quiet whisper of unease that landed on Riccari's desk. He began to dig, and the ground gave way beneath him. He and his partner found not one victim, but dozens. They were girls from the fringes, their stories heartbreakingly similar. The recruitment, the massages, the escalation, the cash, the flights. They built a case, brick by painful brick, a mountain of testimony that pointed to a sprawling, organized sex trafficking ring. The evidence was overwhelming. And then the system fought back. The case was handed to the FBI, but also to a U.S. attorney named Alexander Acosta. What followed was not a triumphant arrest, but a secret, closed-door negotiation that would become a scandal in its own right. In a now infamous non-prosecution agreement, Epstein was offered the deal of a lifetime. The federal government, led by Acosta, agreed to drop all potential federal charges that could have put him in prison for life if he pleaded guilty to minor state charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor. The catch? The deal was to be kept secret from the victims, a blatant violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The justification, as Acosta would later infamously claim, was that Epstein belonged to intelligence. In 2008, Epstein pled guilty to 2 state prostitution charges and was sentenced to a mere 13 months in the Palm Beach County stockade. But his imprisonment was a mockery. He was granted work release for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, allowing him to essentially live a normal life, conducting business from a private office while technically serving his sentence. It was a slap on the wrist, a signal to the world that some men are simply too connected to face true justice. For the victims, it was a brutal lesson in the hierarchy of power. They had been not only abused but betrayed by the very institutions meant to protect them. For a decade, that seemed to be the end of the story. Epstein vanished from the public eye, his crimes swept under the rug of his wealth. But the world was changing. The Me Too movement had erupted, giving victims a new platform and a new courage. And in 2018, the tenacious investigative work of Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald blew the lid off the secret plea deal. Her series, Perversion of Justice, laid bare the entire sordid affair, naming the victims, detailing the scope of the abuse, and exposing the cowardly deal that had allowed a predator to walk free. The public outcry was immediate and deafening. The pressure became unbearable. In July 2019, following a new investigation built on the foundation of the original case and new victim testimony, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. This time, there would be no deal. The charges were severe: sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. He was sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a far cry from the comfortable stockade of his first incarceration. The world watched, waiting for the trial that would finally expose his network. The flight logs were subpoenaed. Names were about to be named. The reckoning, it seemed, was at hand. But then, on the morning of August 10, 2019, the story took its darkest, most conspiratorial turn. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell from what was ruled a suicide by hanging. The circumstances were, and remain, profoundly suspicious. He had been placed on suicide watch just days before after he was found with bruising on his neck, yet he was mysteriously taken off it. The 2 guards on duty that night had allegedly failed to check on him every 30 minutes as required. The cameras in the hallway outside his cell malfunctioned. In an instant, the man at the center of the web was gone, taking his secrets with him. For many, his death was not a suicide but an assassination, a convenient silencing of a man who knew too much, who could have implicated some of the most powerful people on the planet. The official narrative did little to quell the storm of speculation. The idea that Epstein, a man with everything to live for in a legal sense, would kill himself just as he was about to be transferred to a less restrictive facility, strained credulity. His death ensured that the full, unvarnished truth of his network would never be exposed in a court of law. The pursuit of justice, however, was not over. All eyes turned to his longtime confidant, accomplice, and former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. The daughter of a disgraced British media mogul, Maxwell was not a passive bystander. The evidence painted her as a central, active architect of the abuse. She was the one who often conducted the interviews with the girls, who normalized the environment, who made them feel safe before delivering them into the hands of a predator. She was, according to victims, the lady of the house, the one in charge. With Epstein dead, she became the proxy for the entire operation. Her arrest in 2020 was a moment of catharsis. The trial that followed in 2021 was a harrowing replay of the past, but this time the victims had their day in court. They testified with breathtaking courage, their voices steady as they detailed the abuse they suffered at the hands of Epstein and Maxwell. They described how Maxwell herself had sometimes participated in the abuse, erasing any doubt that she was a willing and knowing participant. The evidence was meticulous, from flight logs showing she was present on key trips to phone records and personal photographs. The climax of the trial was not a single piece of evidence, but the cumulative weight of these voices, finally being heard and believed. The jury found her guilty on 5 out of 6 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The story of Jeffrey Epstein is not a closed case. It is an open wound. The flight logs, with their tantalizing list of powerful names, remain a source of intense public speculation and legal scrutiny. While Ghislaine Maxwell is behind bars, the question of who else was involved, who else flew on the Lolita Express, and partook in its horrors, remains the story's terrifying, unanswered final chapter. The true horror lies not in the actions of one evil man, but in the chilling reality of the network that enabled, protected, and likely participated in his crimes, a network that may never fully be brought to light. It is a stark reminder that justice, even when it comes, is often imperfect and incomplete, and that the shadows where the powerful hide are very, very deep. Some secrets are buried not in the ground, but in plain sight on a passenger manifest. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.